afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Teachers. I'm Madeline Cronenberg.
And I'm Consuelo Lara.
And we come to you, as we mention every week, from the land of the Chochenyo, Karkin, Ohlone people. We always want to remember to give a shout out to the native peoples who were here long before us. This week, we're going to talk about what's happening in education. And one of the things that's happening countywide, because we went to a county meeting the other day, is there's a new Contra Costa County Coalition for Fund Education Now. And here's Minnie. Minnie's tired. Fund Education Now, bring her back up. Come on, Minnie, sit up. Fund Education Now is working to support Californians who are aware of the fact that we are so incredibly underfunded in so far as how we take care of education, K through 12 and really K through 14. We're not talking about the university system right now. We're really talking about K through 12 and our community college partners. So Fund Education Now, the coalition is also in Alameda County and Contra Costa County, and they'll be doing a number of events next week to have people realize where we are and that we need to just prioritize the fact that we're underfunded and not just take it for granted. This year we have many different opportunities to step up for our children and to step up for funding. And one of them is our very own Measure R, which is an opportunity to support building new schools and continuing the building program, the very successful building program that we've had over the past 20 years, really, in our district. And so Measure R will help us continue it on. And the thing about building programs is they don't end, just like you don't stop taking care of your house. There's never a time when your whole group of schools are not getting older, just like all of us. Every day they're getting older, and so there's always going to be more work to do. But we had a long time when we didn't do anything, and we have over 50 schools. So we've rebuilt 19 schools of the 50. We've modernized another 16. We've done special projects like a swimming center and sports fields at the high schools. That's both at Kennedy High. There's a new gym and a brand new sports field at Richmond High. But there's still work to be done on those sites. And there are other elementary schools that have had no work done. So that's what we're asking the community to support. And that's why we have our sign, Yes on R. And we're looking for folks to go to the Yes on R website, which I'll link to in our, once again for us, in the description. And you can donate, you can volunteer, you can have your own beautiful Yes on R sign. And we have lots of them to share with you. We just want to be sure that people understand how very important it is to the children of West Contra Costa for R to pass. And all of the reasons to not do it in the end become really, you have to really think in terms of how important each of these school sites is to our kids. I think some of the other reasons, which all have to do with people's budgets, and those are valid things, are things that we have to look at changing. And talking to our political people in Sacramento.
Yeah. About the senior
exemption for the there are two things that people are looking at now, and one of them is to change the how you pass a parcel tax and to perhaps lower the passage rate. And people have talked about that for years, but that may be a conversation that's being conducted with our members of the legislature. And the other thing is to broaden the exemption. So right now, the parcel, if you're over 65, you can exercise an exemption. You have to exercise it, but you can be exempt from paying the parcel tax. It's just an arbitrary thing that you're not that you can't do the same thing with a bond.
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And that
Yeah.
could be changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's needed. It's needed for our seniors.
Absolutely is needed. I
Yeah.
mean, and there are seniors who don't need it. And so all you do is you don't apply for the exemption. You go ahead and pay it.
Exactly.
And we all know who we are and who can pay it. And we know that but if the exemption is there, you can also take advantage of that. It is not there now. I don't want to confuse anybody. As of right now, there is no senior exemption for R. But we're hopeful that someday there will be.
And lots of times people ask, well, we passed a bond in the past, and where did our money go? And we've got this great list. I posted it on my Facebook.
I posted it on between two teachers.
And it
and
tells
online.
you all the new schools. Look at all these schools. It's by city. You can see Richmond's had the most. And then how many schools have been modernized. And then what had special projects, like what Madam mentioned. And then yet ones still need to be improved. So the work has gone on. The other thing I was remembering, I taught at Helms, and I remember I could look out the window and I could see the new Helms being built. And I also remember being asked, what do you think we need to have in our new Helms school? And by golly, that stuff is there now that I remember we said we need this for our parents, particularly for our community and schools offices. And that's all there now. And we got to see it built. Then when we moved over there, we look out the window, you could see the other one demolished. And it's a beautiful school. People love that school. Ford Elementary, I was just remembering we did a tour with my Future Teacher Club. So the schools that have been built are exquisite. I really think they're very, very unique and beautiful schools. We want to continue that, and the work's not done. And so this is why this is very necessary for us to do. So everyone has.
They were not cookie cutter schools.
Not at all. Not at all.
Right, and that's a decision. That's a deliberate decision. I mean, you certainly can choose to do things in a cookie cutter fashion, but the fact is, this is where your children spend all day. And whether you have children or you don't have children, these are the future. These are the folks that are going to be here after we're gone. And you really want, I think, to do the very best for everybody. And that's how we tried to do the bond program, to not try to cut corners and to give them less than they deserved or less than they needed. That's why we went out and asked what kind of programming they wanted in each school. That's why the schools do not look the same. They reflect the community that they're in. Ford was a great example.
Yes.
The color, Miss Swanson, who was the architect at Ford, went to great pains to make sure that it would match the houses in that neighborhood.
That's something.
Right?
Yeah.
To have it be part of the community.
So many unique details.
And each one of the architects had the ability to do that on the list of the 19 schools that have been rebuilt. Right? And so I hope that that's the strategy that continues with the schools that can be built in the future with Measure R. And all of the measures, we're not done with the alphabet, we're not done with measures. Every community is going to keep building more and more measures as we go into the future. Absolutely. And that's a good thing.
Yeah,
that's a good thing. Buildings get old. They're not built for 100 years.
No.
They're not. And some of them are built for a specific style of teaching, which doesn't always work.
Yes, let's not get started on the whole pod school
The pod
issue.
schools, right. And so that's another reason that schools have to, people try things out. They work, they don't work. But anyway, there are many different things around schools. Our message here to you until the election is going to be every week to please vote yes on Measure R.
Yes, please do. Okay.
Why don't you go?
Do we want to transition now into the state funding? And
that sort of goes along with the coalition that we talked about, and that's the state of California's budget has come out, and Governor Newsom has put a lot of one-time funding into the budget. The biggest problem we have, and it's not at all unique to California, it's actually a national problem, but every state has to figure out how to solve it, is how we're going to handle our pensions. Because what happened was when the big recession came, the Great Recession, the there was a lot of funding was lost in the investments that the pension companies had made. So it hasn't been recovered. It's true for cities as well as for school districts. Tomorrow, the city of El Cerrito is having a big meeting just about its own problems, and the problems are stem from its structural deficit. And the structural deficit means you don't get enough revenue to pay your bills. That's the structural deficit, right? So if that was us at home with our own budget, we'd have to get another job, right? Get more money in, or move somewhere cheaper, right? And not have as many bills. And that's what everybody's having to do. That's what West Contra Costa is having to do, because there's a structural deficit there, and they're looking at what they have to cut back, and also how they can bring in more funding. And the same thing is true with the city of El Cerrito. But it's also true across the state of California, because what the state did was move one of their bills to the cities and to the school districts. And that bill was the bill for pensions. It turns out it's a huge bill, and nobody had expected it. So people had made commitments to their labor partners, and all kinds of other commitments of programs that it turns out they're no longer able to meet. So the two big things, the structural deficit from the pension systems and the additional funding that was required by the state in terms of the match from the local government. And the second thing for us, for San Francisco and many other school districts, is the inability to really predict what your special ed funding is, what the needs are. And that becomes this unfunded mandate. You don't get the money to cover it, and you can't predict how fast it's going to grow. And it's grown enormously fast. So more and more communities are in trouble because of it. And Governor Newsom knows that. None of this is a secret, and they're all there are all different strategies to address it, and they did talk about that last night too.
Yeah. And we have our own problems here, and some layoff notices have been sent out. It's also been released, the possible potential cuts in the budget. That document has been released, so in order to get feedback from the community. And I hear a lot about don't cut this and don't cut that, but how about some suggestions? Okay, if you don't want me to cut that, then what do we do? What do we cut? Because there's going to have to be layoffs. There's going to have to be, and it's painful for everybody, and it's sad for everybody. It's not a fun time right now, but we got to do. It's like you said, you have to make the changes. And I really feel like it's temporary. I think we can come out of this. And I think, luckily, we're okay for this year. And this is what we're looking at for next year. But people can give their opinions and give their feedback on the potential budget cuts.
Yeah, and it's a really important thing to do, because it's one of these things that does make you really look at your priorities in a very serious way. You're looking at what kinds of things you want to grow, and at the same time you're looking at changes. I mean, in the grand scheme of this, at the end you have many people who are enormously anxious. I know that anybody who's sitting around, I know in 2010 when I got my pink slip, and everybody said, "Oh, you'll never get a pink slip," and I was there 30 years and I got a pink slip.
Yeah,
right.
Can happen,
and that's what happened because it played out that way. So so I know what it feels like. I know how incredibly stressful it is for everybody who watches the board meetings and doesn't see that that's the only thing they're talking about, because it's the only thing you can think of. So you have this whole group of people who are just waiting to see what's going to happen, because if you're going to need to look for another job, you need to know that as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Right? You need to be able to cover the expenses and to take care of your family. So it's a very important thing.
Yeah.
And we need this district and other districts that are doing it, but particularly here for us, we need to be very focused on looking for the solutions for this coming next few weeks. The way it works is that the pink slips have to go out on March 15th, which means the work to put that together is done in February.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a good time. It's not a happy time. The close thing I remember, we got a grant at Helms, and one turnover grant, everybody got pink slips, and you had to reapply for your job there, so that they could get rid of certain people. I mean, it was pretty bad. It was the most demoralizing year of teaching I ever had. So my friends left, some people,
Right.
and they restructured it. The sad thing was that we were on an upward swing, and they did this, and it was just so infuriating. And it turned out all right, but it's.
But we know what people are feeling on the other side.
It's the feeling of it that never leaves you, of that, and it's like everybody feels it. And so that trickles down to children and. So, and in our community, so we're not taking it lightly, and as much support as we can get from everybody, input and is needed. So, we'll get through this.
We'll get through it. And I think, but the other part of it is going to be that we do need to make sure that statewide the kinds of changes get made to keep this from happening to any district, right? The fact that it happens so often, which is not to say that people shouldn't be held accountable for specific mistakes they make, because that's a separate thing.
Yeah.
But these two things, when you're looking at really the thing you can't predict is the special ed funding. Mm-hmm. The pension issue has been around a long time, and at least what the numbers are going to be. You can plan for those numbers. As hard as they are,
right? You
can plan for them because they're not a surprise.
Yeah.
Special ed stuff, those numbers are a surprise.
Yeah. So we're call to action people, and we like to zero in on those places where changes need to be made, and then we will ask you, and we go up to Sacramento and try to work towards making those changes to make things better. So.
Right. So we're going to think of speaking to our legislators, coming up with ideas, listening, and lots of times there are people who've got great ideas, and we just have to just like we did last year with 1505, there's going to be legislation that we'll want to support.
We look for best practices, we do our research, and we know there's people that are doing this right. We copy those, we steal wherever we can, get suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we are with that. Shall we move to CTE?
Yes.
How about that?
Go ahead.
CTE is something that's very important to me, as I see some of my former students that I've told people, and I feel like we can do better for preparing them for the job market. And not everybody's going to go to college, but everybody needs a job. And we as education institution need to do better at preparing them for those jobs, whether it's a dual enrollment program with our colleges, building and construction pathways, and strengthening all of our pathways so that they do provide that. But like many things, because of cuts and our programs for pathways has suffered. So we have a CTE task force, and we are really pushing and trying to revive that and strengthen it, enhance it, and push forward on it. So, and looking at different kinds of pathways, construction and building, entrepreneur pathway, and of course education is one we've been talking about for over a year now, I think. Mm-hmm. So, and the most recent thing is we got the opportunity to meet with our pathway leads from different schools, and that was, I'm really glad that we got an opportunity.
We learned a lot.
Oh, that was great. So
we learned a lot.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of things in the works in that effort.
Right. I had the opportunity to just watch something online that I'll put another one too in here. If you're at all interested in where career technical education is in California and some of the challenges that they're facing. Mr. O'Donnell, the wonderful Patrick O'Donnell that we were so happy to follow last year as the education chair, who helped us so much with the charter schools. And he's former high school teacher himself. Mr. O'Donnell chaired a committee, an education committee meeting last week about career technical education and about the disconnect, the difficulty of connecting the grant money, how grant money is spent, how the barriers that are huge number of barriers involved in filling out grant applications and then being successful in getting the grants, changes that were made in the grant applications, how the K-12 system coordinates with the community college system, which is another whole issue of huge set of problems. And I'll put the link into the meeting. If you want to watch it, you can fast forward to it. You can watch it. I thought it was very interesting. And one of the most interesting things in there, it just sort of gave you the peek into the bureaucracy. So the state did something that was very good. They decided to put a lot of money into career tech, and they figured out how are they going to do that. Well, the way they did it was to create grant programs that people could apply for. And the grant program required filling out this application. And this one very experienced veteran person in the career tech world spoke about how she had to fill out 9 separate ones, very long applications. Overall, she spent over 200 hours doing these applications, and in the end, she got $6,000. So I would say her district lost some money there.
Kidding, yeah.
And she won't reapply.
No.
No.
It shouldn't be that hard.
No, because it shouldn't be that hard. And anyway, what the message to Mr. O'Donnell and his committee was, there's a lot of room for improvement in the way these are being put together. Yeah. And just so you know, to their credit, the chancellor's office was represented there, as was Mr. Thurman's office. So CTE was represented there too, and they are listening for what problems exist, and the problems are now very clearly out there. They were articulated very clearly, and so it's not just the problems we have here are not. Some of them are unique to us. But some of them, many of them are global problems, just like the pension problem is something we share with other districts. The CTE problems are also shared with other districts, and some of the answers are going to have to be up in Sacramento.
Yes, absolutely. I think so.
But not all of them. Some of them have to be here.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful. I think we have enough best practices out there, but I was just thinking when you were talking how a lot of it has to do with simplifying these processes. It's like duplication of steps.
That came out very clearly
when
this woman explained that.
Like, come
right?
on.
And how when they were given money, and they wound up using the money to hire people to fill out the forms.
Okay, right?
What does that
tell you? No.
Yeah, right. I mean, it should be simpler than that.
Yeah.
So,
that's what it is.
So California has to figure it out, and they are, and the community colleges and the K-12 systems are, talking to each other. It's just that we have a ways to go.
Yes.
We have a ways to go.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see. What's next? Should we talk about John Henry?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we have a charter school, high school, John Henry, that we voted to not renew their petition in the district, and they will be going to the county, and it's a problem. They really did not meet the standards that they should have, and then there's this additional kind of, I don't know what you would call it, other issues that are making people feel unsafe, and there's lawsuits, and there's people being fired or quitting, so there seems to be a lot of other problems like that. But it was not a healthy educational environment, and we saw that, and it wasn't meeting the standards. So it was clear that we could not. So
the district denied the renewal.
Yes.
And that decision is now being appealed to the county. And so if you're interested in...
It's fine.
If you're interested in following that, you can find the documentation around it on the district website and also ultimately on the county website.
Yeah, following, I think it was December the 18th. If you look at that board video, you'll see all of the, the presentation.
Yeah,
and then
in the agenda.
in the agenda.
Materials
So
in the agenda.
all of it will be there if you need more information on that. Okay. So I think we're at announcements now.
Yep, we're at announcements.
Okay. I just want to talk about my girls group, our girls group. I do with my good friend, the Honorable Genoveva Callaway, former mayor of San Pablo. Her and I are starting our 4th year now of working with mentoring young girls at Richmond High. We specifically choose girls who are, let's say, not inspired by school.
Yet to be inspired.
Yet to be inspired by school, but we have really changed some girls' lives, I think. So it's great fun. And speaking of CTE and jobs, we're going to put on a little mini, like a youth job fair at Richmond High for summer jobs for teens. So anybody knows anybody that would like to participate in that, just let me know. And we could put a booth or a table out for you. That'll be on Monday, March the 2nd. And let's see, what else do we have? Well, tonight there's a kickoff for our friend Mark Desagne's campaign. That's tonight at 6 in Concord at the Union Hall, I think in Detroit. Yeah, on Detroit Avenue. And I think that's my announcements.
Well, I wanted to add one thing. I want to do a shout out to a website that I follow and that I found something on that was really unique and I think useful. And I'm sharing it out with other people, but I also wanted to say that I'm doing that and give a shout out to a teacher in Sacramento named Larry Ferlazzo. And Mr. Ferlazzo is an ESL teacher and has come up with the most unique strategy to support his students in being respectful and work really well with substitute teachers that come into his classroom. I was blown away by what he did, and it just makes so much sense. I think it should be a strategy that all teachers use because it allows, what it does is it allows the teacher and the substitute and the students essentially to have a much better communication and for it to be very clear to the students that their behavior towards the sub while he or she is there is something that's going to be shared with Mr. Ferlazzo, with the teacher, and something that they're responsible for. It's not this, anyway, it's not something they're going to not be responsible for and just a day where you can get away with a lot of stuff. Nobody gets nobody gets away with anything in Mr. Ferlazzo's class.
Yeah.
And he found a very reasonable, simple structure to do it.
It's a very unique kind of thing to do.
It's a very unique thing.
Very cool.
So I'll put the link to it also in the description here down on the YouTube channel link and also in the Facebook links.
Yeah.
So the last thing, we want you to subscribe if you're on Facebook, ring the bell, to like the episode, and we're going to share one more and share it. And now we have a joke.
Hello, this is Mighty Voice here. So, why do you never serve beer at a math party?
Never serve beer at a math party. Why?
Because you can't drink and derive.
Oh, derive.
Oh, okay.
It took a minute or two.
Yes, it
Yeah,
did.
it did.
It
It
took
took
a minute or two. Okay, you're gonna get, by the time you see this, you're very soon to be getting your ballots. Yes on R.
Please.
Please.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, Sonar?
Yes on R.